What's up, everybody? How you doing? And welcome back to the final episode of this season's Living Life Intently podcast. I think I said that correctly. Anyways, I'm your host, Lee Frazier, and I'm coming live and direct right from the mic from my laptop with a blanket around my head, trying to dampen the reverb in this room because I was a dummy and forgot my mic at home. So, we had this big intro and thank you planned. Canary recorded it yesterday. I was going to interject, but this mic is so bad. I'm just going to let him talk. But first off, I want to say thanks to everybody who listened, subscribed, downloaded, shared this podcast over this winter. It's very fun to put these together and chat with all the great people that jump on. This episode is featuring my good pals, Chris and Jan from A for Adventure. And just from the bottom of our dirty hearts, we friggin' love yous. And we'll see you this summer. If you're around Marguerite or around the Cabot Trails, pop in, say hello, have a coffee, jump on the river, all that sort of stuff. I'm not going to try to sell you on anything except for our paddle trip that we launched last week. So 4 days on the Marguerite River. Anyways, this is Canary with the final thank yous. And we'll see you on some random episodes maybe this summer. Anyways, it's Lee Frazier signing off. Love ya. Peace.
Big thanks to Chris Surrett and Jan Lapierre for capping this season's run of episodes. We do have some releases planned for the summer and fall this year, so be on the lookout for these special episodes. We would like to thank this season's guests, Chef Brian Picard from the Bite House, Rice and Lions from the Highland Hostel, Robin Young and Kyle McPhee from Fee's Original Goods, Benoit Lalonde. Grab a copy of both of his books, Waterfalls of Cape Breton and Nova Scotia, for this summer's adventures. Jordan Bonaparte from the Nighttime Podcast, Jay Rodding from Highland Bow and Arrow, Caitlin Purcell and Sarah Beth Drover from Salty Roses and the Periwinkle Cafe, Dennis Thibault from Birch Canoe Works, the Sauce Boss Kevin Taylor from Island Sauce Co., Mariah Kearney from My Home Apparel, Grant Whitcomb from KIF. Big thanks to Grant for supporting our adventures as well as jumping on the pod. I also like to thank Kate and Kwame for the amazing hospitality in the HRM, and Hilda at the Inverary Inn for her amazing hospitality, and everyone that trekked across the Highlands: Hillary, Gord, Mike, Gaia, Sarah, Alec, and Emily. Most importantly, we want to thank our listeners. Your engagement and feedback has been incredible and the main reason we decided to step it up this time around. As always, we encourage you to like, download, comment, and rate us on your podcast app, and don't forget to share this podcast with your friends. Be sure to follow Live Life Intense on all socials for this year's big trips and special events. Jump on the mailing list at livelifeintense.com for exclusive offers and discounts. And if you want to go for a stroll in the forest or want the skinny on some secret summer dance parties, I'm Sounds of Fire on Instagram. Oh, and I want to give a big thanks to Ashley Moffat for letting us give you a little taste of her record Habitat, found on Apple Music. Here's Platypus Yo.
I'm a platypus, yo. I don't make sense. I'm confusing and amusing, but in my defense, don't critique, cause I'm unique. Yeah, me, I'm one of a kind. You can search the whole world for my exclusive design. I live in lakes and rivers on the east coast of Australia, and no, I'm not a hoax. I'm sensitive and tactile and carnivorous. I'm nocturnal and I burrow and I'm venomous. I'm a platypus, yo. I'm a platypus, yo. I'm a platypus, yo. I'm a platypus, yo. I'm like a duck, yeah, that's right. I got a bill like a duck, but I'm a mammal, not a bird, so that's kinda messed up. If you wanna get technical, it's called a snout, and it's a sensory organ that contains my mouth. A male platypus, don't mess with him. He's got a stinger on his heel filled with poison. If you're not a friend, then you are a foe, and he'll slap you with the stinger in a venomous blow. He's a platypus, yo. I'm a platypus, yo. He's a platypus, yo.
So we're here with Jan and Chris.
Baby.
Yeah.
And Lee.
And Lee. Me? And me.
Johnny.
Johnny Shit Show.
Johnny K.
So boys,
Johnny K.
Why don't you introduce yourselves and tell us what's up?
Oh, well, this is Jan LaPierre. And
Are you sure?
Maybe a little more energy here.
well, you know, those people who are listening can't appreciate the fact that there's a gorgeous sunset falling behind us here.
That's true.
I'm a little captivated by that. So we also are recording to you live from a cherished place, which is my childhood home down here in beautiful Herring Cove, Nova Scotia.
I've never been down this way. This is my first drive down here.
I guess there probably wouldn't have been a ton of reason for you to have come down here.
Yeah, no, it's fucking beautiful though.
Yeah.
Well, how did you were looking at your phone the whole time?
I was trying to switch my new phone from my old phone, but it was a beautiful drive. Yeah.
You know what? And like nowadays, and you guys can appreciate this from your own Cape Breton lens, it's like when I grew up here, Herring Cove was a separate entity. It was the boonies of Halifax.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's a suburb of Halifax, right?
That's true.
I remember when I lived here 6 years ago, it was still like outside the city.
Yeah,
quite a
fully.
bit.
Absolutely. Like the bus came 4 times a day. And we would go in on Tuesdays to skateboard and buy a new CD.
Ooh.
Yeah. In fact, this right here in a very similar circle, I remember playing hooky off because Tuesdays when new albums came out, we went in and bought OK Computer by Radiohead, and we brought it to this very spot. And 4 of us, just like this, sat there and listened to that thing and had our minds blown.
Cool.
Yeah.
I love the aesthetic here. I feel like I walked into a movie set.
You're not the first to say it.
I feel like this is like a cabin from like Stranger Things.
This is if you guys
You
do
know
a
what I'm saying?
podcast. If you guys do a Name for Adventure one, this is like if you do a video one, this is your set.
Oh, I've long talked about doing like a variety show down here.
Or that.
Yeah.
Like comedy, music,
Yeah.
current affairs. Who knows?
And it plays an integral part in our story of
Our
coming
love
together.
story.
Yeah, our
Okay,
love
well,
story.
let's hear it. What is it?
So a quick version of this. I used to drive by this place all the time. Before I knew Jan, I used to go to Duncan's Cove a lot. And I used to slow down and look at this cabin that we're in right now. I used to think, man, like I even took pictures of it. And I was just like, this is what a sweet spot. Like those guys are doing it right. Like all the cliche things is like, I swear.
we were.
Yeah, this is before I even knew you. And then I had a Christmas party one year, and a buddy of mine said that he's going to paddle a kayak to Sable Island. And I was like, well, that's a crazy idea. Who are you doing that with? Come on over and let's chat about it. I'd love to help with social media and sponsorship and marketing and stuff. Because it was a fundraiser to send kids to camp at Brigadoon Village. And so in walks Jan, and I met him for the first time. And then he's like, we had a great meeting, and I was going to be on board, and I got to go to Sable Island, and they were kayaking there, and we're going to raise money. And he's like, I'm having a little shindig at my parents' place where I grew up on the weekend. Come on over. So I come here. It's dark. I walk down the back, and I stand on the deck, and I realize where I am. I'm like, I'm at that cabin that I used to stop and look at all those times. Like, what is going on? And that's how, and then, the rest is history. That was in
So we're celebrating
2013.
Well, we first met in 2012. So we are actually, Chris and I, celebrating 10 years together.
I knew that.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to the doggos for that one.
No, that's crazy, man. That's crazy that was 10 years ago.
I feel like time has deconstructed for everybody over the last couple of years, but definitely we never imagined it would be a 10-year journey. That's for sure.
Yeah. So just to finish the story, the boys paddled the Sable. I was on the fishing boat going with them. It took them 30 hours. They paddled for 30 hours straight from Canso, beautiful Canso.
Holy fuck.
It was crazy. It was crazy all through the night. We left at like 5 in the morning, and they got there like 10 in the morning, 30 hours later or something like that. My math is wrong, but it's close to that time.
Yeah.
And we spent like 6 hours on the Sable running around, and the boys were delusional. I tried to stay up the whole time in solidarity. I ended up passing out on the table and at like 3 in the morning. But for the most part, I stayed up too. And it was amazing. So we raised like $35,000 to send kids to camp down at Brigadoon Village.
Cow.
It was super, super awesome. On the way home, once we got back to dry land, back at Canso, Jan said, I got another idea. This time it's a book, a children's book. And he started reading A is for adventure, B is for biking, C is for canoeing. And I was like, dude, I think you got to see it. I pulled over, and I remember we were like somewhere's like by like the Whitehead or something there, like just outside of Canso. I was like, did you really write this? Because this is really cool. Like I underestimated you.
There's still lots of conspiracy theories suggesting that I did not.
Which
I do not quell ever.
But we found an amazing illustrator, and then we just started working on this children's book, and started talking about it. Like, opened up a social media account for A for Adventure, and then like CBC came here. Whoa, another connection. Our first time on CBC, they came here, and we canoed. This little canoe route back in behind here goes to a couple lakes, and the reporter came with us with a microphone and recorded this like 6-minute CBC hit.
Yeah.
And then they asked us to come on like the next week and talk about something else. And then we've been doing CBC now for 7 years, 8 years, something like that. Every Wednesday here in Nova Scotia. And then recently we're now on 5 different channels, which is really cool. And it gives us a chance we've talked about Live Life Intense before, like many times on CBC.
We're still waiting for our kickback on that, actually.
No, it gives us a chance.
Get credit, in-store credit.
Yeah, it gives us a chance to kind of like talk about the outdoor community, which has been super. We're really grateful for that chance for sure.
Look, I think from our perspective, like the opportunity to not talk about us, but like really shine the light on all the awesome people doing amazing stuff around the region, I think pretty much single-handedly has kept us invigorated about it all, because, everywhere we look, like, Lee's a great example. So are you, Jonathan. Like, honestly, the amount of people doing really, really cool, awesome stuff is just like, we keep saying it like it's,
groundbreaking.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But we've always believed, and we still believe, that it's a rising tide that lifts all boats, right? Like, that we're all in this together, and that, from our little perch, just kind of celebrating other people, it's an awesome place to be.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I like our community. I like staying in touch with the outdoors community, and I attribute it to I had been to I traveled to Thailand for a bit, and I went to Chiang Mai, and I really fell in love with Chiang Mai because everybody was like so unique, and they all had their own really weird little path that led them all to that spot, right? And that's kind of how I feel about the outdoors community is, everybody is so different, but all has their own little story that led them to be walking in the woods together on this trail.
It's like following a passion.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the biggest thing. Like, what else would you be doing if you weren't doing this?
You don't want to know.
Exactly. Yeah.
It was like
you boys know what I'd be doing.
Yeah.
Fair. It's well documented.
Well, let's not go there.
We're glad you're here. We're glad you're here.
So yeah, no, I just, when we were kids, there was nobody to do any of this shit. So I was like, I knew a very small handful of people. So when I shifted gears and started doing what I'm doing now, there was still only a handful of people doing what I was doing. And I knew a few guys, and I knew a couple other people, but I don't know if maybe this is just me because I was in a completely different scene for like a decade and a half, but I've just noticed a big swelling of people being interested in more so the outdoor, because when I was still kicking around Halifax, it was still club scene territory. That's all it was party scene, club scene, music scene. And then once I started shifting, maybe it's almost like my personal algorithm changed in those years, right? And then I maybe it was in front of me this whole time. I don't know, but I just remember my images of doing the shit that we're doing now when I was a kid was very limited to a small group of people that I knew. And it was very hard to meet other people, but now it's so much easier to meet other people doing it. And I've just noticed so much more people doing it. I don't know if you guys have the same experience.
Look, I seriously could contend that somewhere's around 2006 or 7, I spent a lot of my 20s kind of leading adventures in other places in the world. But for little stints, and I'd come back here in the summer and I would lead kayaking tours. I'd be up in Pollock's Cove or, here, there, and everywhere. And honestly, there was a time where if I saw a car go by with a roof rack, I likely knew who it was, because the outdoors scene was that small that and I worked at the trail shop back in the day. So if you bought that roof rack, you probably got it from us, and I probably helped you with it, right? So, and it was just like, and it, you know, everyone was kind of stoked, but the community was small. Now, in isolation, like you say, like there was people all over the place who were doing their own thing and had their own little microclimate in it.
Yeah.
But the explosion of people suddenly recognizing that over the last 10 years, I mean, you know, from when we began this in 2012 to now, it is an entirely different landscape.
Yeah.
Well, I just look at it like, you know, when I went to Pollett's Cove in the summertime, I would go for a week straight, and I would see 5 people, like in the height of like August, maybe. I lived there for a week, like literally, like with 4 of us would be there, and we wouldn't see a goddamn soul.
So I'm super curious to get your guys' opinion on this, because this is a big one for Chris and I. Like,
Controversial? Is this controversial?
well, I mean, it is and it isn't, right? Because it's like part of the scene that we find ourselves is like sharing these awesome places, awesome adventures, awesome people doing awesome things, right? But like there is an element, and we feel it, and I'm sure you guys do too, right? Where it's like, how much is appropriate to share?
Yeah.
And how much is, in essence, inspiring and helping people, and how much of it is actually a deterrent?
So,
Because our opinion on it has evolved a lot over the time.
Social media for me has opened up a different pathway into experiences in the outdoors. And what I mean by that is you used to have to start with little hikes. And then you'd go, and then you'd see someone on the trail, and they would tell you about another cool place. And then you'd go to that cool place, and you'd graduate to Pollett's Cove, or you graduate to these bigger hikes and places that were really beautiful. You had to work your way there. Now social media, people can post photos, and other people see them, and then they go right to that place, that cool place that used to take time to get to. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's, and my biggest concern, our concern with something that we always like to address, is the education on, we want people to go to cool places. But when you're there, there's a certain way to act so education on, you know, like leave no trace and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's been interesting. Actually, funny story. Maybe this will be controversial, but Jan and I are driving. I think we were driving to Ontario, to be honest with you, and we were still in Halifax. And I pull up my phone, and I'm in the passenger seat, and I pull up in a CBC article, and there's a picture of, and I don't know, this is probably like 6 years ago, maybe, or something. There's a picture of Pollett's Cove.
The horses?
Well, and then I click on the article, and it's an article about Live Life Intense.
Oh shit, they wrote an article about it?
This was like a while ago.
Oh fuck.
And I'm sure you didn't know they chose that picture, but I was like, who are these guys posting a photo of Pollett's Cove on an article? And it wasn't you, it was CBC. It was before I knew you.
Was it Chronicle?
Maybe it was Chronicle Herald. It could have been. It could have been Chronicle Herald.
You know what it was? Yeah. It was, yeah. Yeah. It was the first year we opened, yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, what is going on? I was like, does Matt Moore know that they are talking about Pollett's Cove? Because I had a funny story about Pollett's Cove in that same light. I put a picture up one of my first times there, which was probably 10 years ago, like the start of kind of like Instagram, whenever that was for me. And Nova Scotia Tourism put the photo, because I knew one of the people working there, they put the photo of me having breakfast with Pollett's Cove down, like I was up on the hill.
Yeah.
And they shared it on their Visit Nova Scotia page. And I was like, wow, that seems weird, because it's private property, and I can't imagine tourism. Why would they share that photo? And then Matt Moore wrote me a message. He was like, hey man, take that photo down. Matt Moore is the owner.
Yeah.
I know you guys know that, but for the listeners. And so I was like, yeah, man, I'm so sorry. And then I got to talking with him, and he was telling me like kind of his journey, his life story, which is really cool. And yeah, and then shortly after I saw that article that they had put it with you, and I was like, oh man, like, so that was before I knew you and realized that you're a sweet guy, and like, you know, but it was a really interesting, it kind of started for us, like, that's when I started realizing, like, yeah, like these, without gentle like care, these places that we love so much can be destroyed if we're oversharing them. And so we had to really look ourselves in the mirror, and we don't do a perfect job. And I'm sure people out there maybe don't like us because we posted something in the past or something, but we do try to be really careful with that now. And I know I've seen a couple of your posts ranting about.
It is a very hard it's a sticky topic. That's what I'm going to get at. It's a very sticky topic because the opinion has changed so drastically from when I first started to now. I mean, that picture, that was that's here. I have the picture, that article framed because it was like front page Chronicle Herald. First year, I was like, how did we land front page of the business section of Chronicle Herald? I have no clue.
Because you followed your passion.
Oh, fucking somebody liked it. But yeah, that picture was I can't even remember what picture.
I don't remember the picture.
I think it was Roman Bukoffer, photographer from Shanty Camp I grew up with, and it was his, and he had given us a bunch of hiking related photos for our website. And I didn't know anything about like the do's and don'ts and all that sort of stuff. It was just like, I really like that photo, whatever, that was on front page of our website, and that's what they ended up using for that article. And then since then, the my thought process had kind of started to change a little bit because of things like, you know, the impact we started doing tubing on the Margaret River. So prior to that, the only people that tubed on the river were maybe 15 people a year that were locals that we would go with and hang out with, and friends of ours. And it was like a local activity. It wasn't really that well known, and, you know, people just float for fun. And then we started doing it, and I saw the impact that what we had of showcasing that activity, because people come down from wherever and they've, you know, go to Walmart, whatever, buy a tube and hit the river. And then we saw the impact of waste, the impact of people not respecting the private property that they're accessing. The property that we used to use was, it's a privately owned piece of land. It's like actually a part of the old Cabot Trail. And we would land down there to put our clients in the river, and the parking lot would be rammed full of people and garbage everywhere and tubes all over the place. And, you know, and then it's like Margaree is a very big Atlantic salmon industry there, or tourist or whatever, fishing industry, whatever, not industry. What's the word I'm looking for? Anyways,
it's kind of an industry.
Yeah. So I didn't want to.
Community.
I saw the amount of people that use that section of the river that we use for tubing. It's fine, you know. If people from way come down, they're not with us. Whatever, they hit the river. We end up sending crews down to clean up. We have like waste. We pick up waste at the start, waste at the end, because it reflects poorly on us. But also, it's like the influx of people using that river during the day. Nobody can fish that section because there's so many, like literally so many people that go down through all the holes. So there's no point. So I didn't want to see that happen on the rest of the river. And we want to keep it to that one area. So anybody that asks us where to go, we tell them, hey, you can do the same run we're doing. Just go down from our property, and there's a spot you can put in. You go down. This is the bridge. Park your car there. That sort of stuff. But the Paulus Cove thing, so we ended up taking that picture down because I realized that we might be sharing stuff that it was privately owned land, because it got brought to my attention that you weren't supposed to be doing that. And I had no clue. I was uneducated.
Yeah, same thing happened to me, yeah.
Right? So I changed my viewpoint, stopped doing that. And then with the rise of social media and geotag and that sort of stuff, it really came to a head when I went to Paulus Cove, and I was there, and it was just like there's people cutting down trees. There was like big parties with like Bluetooth speakers. We were a big group as well. We were 20 people that we went in there, but there was like probably 150 people in the cove. Like crazy parties. Crazy. And like there was going to be a mutiny at one point because the people partying was a group of like 30, 40 people, like all night, like 4 a.m, still partying, and people from the rest of the cove screaming at them. Like no etiquette of what to do. It's like a mecca where people hiking into and have fun and relax. And so anyways, I got back, and I just kind of put up a big post and took a lot of online flack for that one.
I loved it,
but it was almost, people took it a little bit differently, where calling us or myself gatekeeper of the cove, and it was more or less talking about educating people on the hike, because I met families hiking in flip-flops on Heart Attack Hill being like, how far to the horses? I'm like, buddy, you have like
a day
left. Like, 2 more mountains to go, man.
Do you know you have no water bottle, like none of that sort of stuff? So that is not being educated, seeing the pictures on social media, seeing the geotag, going there, not reading about it. So if somebody asks me about it, I tell them like every detail that I know and what to look out for.
Yeah, and that's the education part that I'm talking about. That's so important. That gets missed because of social media, and people just like, oh, I'm going to go there and wear their flip-flops because they don't know how far it is.
I mean, I'm not saying I had a buddy walk in barefoot with a backpack on. I mean, he made it, but you know, but he's experienced and he knows what he's doing. So it's about educating people on the proper etiquette, and it, like especially in the Highlands, like doing the winter stuff, you don't have to, you know, pay us as a guiding company to take you across. You can still do it on your own through Parks Canada with proper permits. However, I try to make everybody aware of what the climate is like, because it doesn't give two shits about you. And it's a very like...
Our last trek was a really good example for that. You know, most of the people that came with us were pretty experienced hikers, pretty experienced with the outdoors. A couple weren't. You know, it's a recreation for them, but you know, not super experienced with multi-day treks or whatever.
Where does Bardsley fit in that?
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty experienced outdoorsman, you know. But like in the first 24 hours, we saw 4 seasons and sweat winds, and like, you know, that first morning waking up, people were taking panic attacks. Like,
you guys had rain too, didn't you?
We had rain, sleet, hail, snow, flash freezing,
it's
sweat
hard
winds.
to bring people to a calm state when the wind is raging over 100 kilometers an hour.
Yeah.
In my experience.
So I just want to get back, back to your question about...
what was the question?
Just like introducing people using social media and so on and so forth. Like, you know, I'm very fortunate that I get to use the outdoors as therapy and, you know, use the experience I've gained throughout my life to help other people get to a place where, you know, they feel comfortable in the outdoors. And I think, like, you know, most of the cool spots I've ever been, I only got there because somebody shared a pin. I only knew about it because of that, right? Or I only found out about this waterfall or this cave or whatever because somebody was willing to tell me where it was.
Yeah.
So with that being said, you know, I tried to do the educational thing with people. I think, like, you know, people can only really understand the gravity of environmental impact when they experience it, you know? So maybe not everybody's going to hike out 20 pounds of rope when they leave Paulette's Cove or a bag of garbage or whatever. But I think going into the woods with environmentally conscious people and seeing them pick up trash as they walk through the trail, that rubs off on you, you know? And then the gatekeeping thing, we talk about this all the time, is like, my biggest thing with gatekeeping is if it is unsafe for somebody with little experience to be there, such as Rocky Brook Falls, Tanner Brook Falls, Second Forks, getting to caves, mines. Like, yeah, I fucking go in that shit, but but I do not feel comfortable or want to be responsible for sending somebody there that thinks that it's a walk in the park and they can't get hurt. You know, so those are the things I gatekeep, are the things that would be dangerous for you to go. And most people, if they say, I really want to go here, but you won't tell me where it is, I will take them there. Right. And I will make sure that they follow, you know, at least I will make sure that they come back. Will I come back? I don't fucking know.
You heard it here, folks. He's willing to sacrifice himself for you.
That's right.
That's another reason to sign up for a tour with Live Life Intense.
Well, I mean, like everything is findable, or you know, you can find anything these days, right? So it's very hard to keep people away from. It's just, you just got to do your best to try to educate people on the fact, and that's pretty much the end of it. That's where I've settled now. So
that's 100% where we are at, man. Like, education, all we can do is, you know, talk about it on the radio, give people tips, you know, try to lead by example, you know, but education, because people can Google whatever they want. They know where to go, and they can. No problem.
He was reverse image searching a picture because somebody wouldn't tell him the spot. And he just put the image in, and it told him 50.
Well, somebody. So about a year ago, somebody posted a picture of George Fraser Slot Canyon. Oh, yeah. You know, the waterfall.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I've never been there, but that's on my list for this year to go to.
When you guys were talking about that in the podcast, my ears were like, "What are they going to say here?"
Right.
Yeah.
So
that's another one with a guide. Go with Lori Curry from Local Guide Adventures.
Cool.
He's your guy. And because it's one of those places, like, we could all do it, no problem, but there's a couple ropes to go down.
Yeah.
There's some slippery rocks. There's you have to cross the river after you go down
Somebody
a rope.
else recommended him too. So like I
Laurie
might just do it for the rush.
He's also
He's an absolute
darling
beauty.
of a human.
You know, I love the interaction, you know, and that's like a value you get with a guide as well. Is like the interaction. You get a little local history, you get a little local flair, like, you know, so I love that stuff.
Couldn't recommend
But somebody
enough.
posted a picture of that, and I said, in Nova Scotia Hiking Adventures group.
Right. Yeah.
And I said, where is this? Well, there's a bunch of people in the comments. Where is this? Where is this? Where is this? One person said, I can't tell you. It's secret.
And look, there's
so
an aspect of that frustrates me too, right? Because there's now this baiting that's going on, right? Because
you put the picture up. If you put a picture up,
This is
you kind of like.
So I took the photo and I put it in Tin Eye. You know what Tin Eye is? Reverse image search.
Yeah.
Cool.
And it gave me all the photos that are close to that, right?
It's on Google. Like you can see it's like.
It's got a pin, but I had no idea. Like I didn't even know where to start. Like, what do I call that if they didn't name it?
Right.
Yeah,
cool
They
looking
didn't,
water.
they didn't
Yeah.
say this is George Fraser Slock Canyon, or I would have fucking Googled where George Fraser River is, right?
Of course.
It's just like, but anyway.
That's
But you know
cool.
what? This
Wow.
does kind of illustrate like the second fold to this problem, right? Because like there's obviously like the over loving that's going on sometimes. you know, and we hear about that. There's the second part of it that I guess I'm more afraid of, in that, like, you know, specifically given the trajectory of the last couple of years, mental health is a discussion point that is like starting to see its time in the day. But I feel like we're about to collide into another pandemic of people really, you know, bottoming out from a hard couple of years, right? And, you know, I wonder about our impact at times, and we talk about this a lot, which is like sometimes sharing these things are triggering people in the opposite direction than we intended to. Because they don't see themselves as part of it, despite real effort to make them feel like there's community here and that we're all in open arms.
Yeah.
But I wonder too, because there's an aspect of addiction that comes in with, you know, social media. We all have felt that, right, at different times.
Yeah.
So, you know, part of me, like, I almost get stage fright posting things now because I'm like, well, Jesus, I got a lot of weight on our shoulders here because, like, A, I don't know that I want, you know, are we supposed to be sharing this place? B, who's being triggered by this in the opposite way that we intended to be?
Yeah.
So
I think one thing I've learned in recovery is that, you know, I am not responsible for somebody else's opinion. I'm not responsible for somebody else's feelings, you know. However, one of the things that, like, I have found really awesome about not even just the outdoors community, but just being able to, like, share adventures. And I'm sure you guys have the same thing, is like, you know, people who are in your life that might not necessarily be able to get outside.
absolutely.
Are like, yes, you know, like I'll have like an older lady that I barely know that was somebody's aunt that I grew up with message me and be like, my husband and I spent our honeymoon there. I have two total knees done, so I can't hike up that anymore, but I really love seeing, you know. And then on the other side of it is like the addiction thing is like, you know, I get to sometimes take out fellow peoples in recovery and get them re-amalgamated with nature. And, you know, it's like I know when I was in a club all the time, or when I was sitting at home all the time and just high or drunk, like I did not even consider that I could go outside, let alone hike a mountain.
Because your world becomes that much smaller, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I work in film, and part of that is, you know, doing tourism shoots, and like that is literally the only time of the year I ever went out into nature for 10 years before I got sober. Right. So I don't know, like I get what you're saying about triggering people and so on and so forth. But I think like part of our duty to being, you know, vocal members of the outdoors community is, giving people the opportunity to join us or being positive advocates.
Fully, and this is like such a critical point because, what we have found in the most powerful moments of this 10-year ride for sure have been where we have found ourselves with people who are very new to the outdoors or like yourself, right? Like returning to it after a time. And it's absolutely when the cameras and the phones are put away and it's the conversations around the campfire. One of the things we've been really proud of, over the last 6 years is like the Learn to Camp program that we've been involved with, right? And from its very inception back in 2015, we invited new Canadians to come out with us.
Oh, cool.
And in that iteration, it seems like a whole nother world, whole nother conflict. Like, that was people coming from Syria. And like they're, you could see, I mean, this is so in our face right now with everything within Ukraine, right? But like you could see the scars of war on their face.
Yeah.
And we are down there in Keji, convincing them that the outdoors is a really fun place to be, you know, and convincing them to go camping.
Yeah.
When they just came from a refugee camp.
Yeah.
And thinking like, is this, are we introducing a good thing here? Which we obviously believe that we deeply are, but, you're totally right, man. Like it's those moments where you're out there and you can see the lights turn on for somebody that this is, even if it's just in that moment, right? And I think to kind of put a pin on this whole thing is just that like our whole opinion of it changes all the time.
Yeah, it's evolving
completely, for sure. And you know how I feel about it right now is not necessarily how I'm going to feel about it.
And sometimes I think depending on like the demographic or the people you're working with or the topic you're speaking on or the place we're talking about, it changes as well, Definitely. So like when I think about like people who are more inexperienced saying, "Oh, I want to jump on this trek and do this crazy thing,"
right?
And like, far be it for me to tell you what you can do or can't do, but I think from my experience, I know I was miserable when I decided to do this and I wasn't fucking ready for it.
Right. And there's like the overall ultimate truth here that like the actual way you learn how to do all of this is failing miserably.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So like at a certain point, you got to be like, fly, little birdie, go, like you got to do this. But at the same time, be like, here's all the things you need to know.
It's funny. We did the horseshoe trek last year in the winter, 4 days, to tip over and then back out.
Through the Highlands.
Through the Highlands.
Cape Breton Highlands, yeah.
Yeah. And so Lee had asked me at Christmas, the day after I got the postcard that said, let's go do this.
I didn't ask you. I told you.
Yeah, he told me we're doing this.
Start training now. So
I got a gym membership. I went out. I was super motivated. 4 hours a day at the gym, beating the shit.
4 hours.
4 hours, dude.
Boy.
Two 2-hour workouts a day because I was off work. I had nothing going on. Pandemic, whatever, right? Who cares? Let's do this. So
I had addict brain, eh?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I worked super hard at it. And when I got there, I realized that I didn't prepare mentally for this.
Oh, and that's I'm so glad you bring that up.
So this year when we did this one, I was like, okay, I got to prepare for this. So got a gym membership, 5 hours a week at the gym. But I spent more time out in the cold. I spent more time on my gear prep. I spent more time stretching, to ensure that the things that would impact me physically, that would deteriorate me mentally, that I was prepared for those things, right? And despite finishing across the Highlands with a broken toe and little things like that, I was my spirits were up. I was ready to go, right? Prepared mentally.
Yeah. Well, look, I feel like you guys kind of come at this from opposite ends, right? Because if I'm reading the room right, I'm feeling like Lee's ready to hike, if I told him to, all the way back to Cape Breton on foot if he had to.
Yeah.
Right?
Starting now.
Yeah. I have to do it. I'm going to go do it.
Barefoot? Okay.
Yeah, no problem. Whereas you're coming at it from a different angle, right? Having seen some things.
Yeah, but you got to think of it. I grew up, the first time I did a hike like a big hike was Paul's Cove when I was 5 years old. That was like my entry level. So that was like Reebok pumps on, backpack on my back. And then when I started crying, my dad would be like, nope, not carrying that bag. You're hiking the whole way. I was like, okay.
You guys should do
well, no, I probably wasn't like, okay. I was probably like crying, like, come on, take it. And he's like, nope, fuck that. You're taking it. You're carrying it now.
A signature run?
No, like if you want to up your Live Life Intense merch, signature run of Reebok pumps. The logo down the side. I would buy those.
I'll get in touch with Alibaba. see if we can get a manufacturer on the line.
So is that kind of where you came to it, man? Like your folks, like they were charging.
Yeah, Dad. When we were kids, I remembered it completely different, and my brother actually brought it up. Or no, actually, my dad did 2 years ago, and because my friends were down, and he was telling the whole story and stuff. So, and I was like, "Wow, I didn't even know that's how this happened. I didn't know this is." Anyway, so you have beavers, cubs, that sort of stuff. So we had beavers, and people that approached Dad. This would probably be 1990 when I was 5. So around that time, 89, 90, somebody approached Dad and said, "We would like somebody to do Boy Scouts," and he said, "Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll do it." Under one condition. And they're like, okay, what's that? And he goes, I'm going to bring my kids no matter what age with me. And they're like, okay. And so I was I remember being in Beavers, and he pulls me out of Beavers, and we're running. It was like kids in their teens, right? So, and then me. And I was just, there's pictures of this. I think it's on the website too. And I have a bunch at the house. Or scanned on my computer, and we're there at the trailhead at Paul's Cove, and they had bought at the time Dad was running or my grandmother's running the company, the forestry company, and she had a crew van for planting trees, right? So it had the rack on top for holding all the tree planting stuff, and the van. So that was our hiking mobile, and so we all piled in that, and we went down to Paul's Cove and hiked in, and we still have them, the triangle tents with the poles.
Oh, like a hoochie.
Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
So I still have a bin.
With no floor, right?
No one had a floor.
Oh,
no, these
okay.
ones had a floor, but it was like the aluminum pole on the ends, and then you have your tension line off the sides. But they used to get flattened with the wind.
Was it canvas?
No. It was like a nylon or whatever you said.
Early gen.
His father hiked it in rubber boots and chainsaw hands.
That was Second Forks Falls. That was Second Forks Falls.
Which was like the creme de la creme of gear back then. You know what I mean? It truly was.
I mean, we all went in and we had fun, and we were in Otter Brook, and there's like the brook that goes down to the ocean. There's all this little pools in the rock, and we were bathing. We'd camp there for the night, and we're bathing in or we camped there on the way back, and we're bathing in these pools like a hot tub. Everybody's like showering and whatever. Yeah, that was the first, but the Boy Scouts was not really Boy Scouts. It was like crazy shit, like winter camping, sleeping in snowbanks, and it never really got badges or none of those sashes or anything. It was just a bunch of kids going out, and I have no idea how they let them do things that they did back then. And then I think I was like Seawall Trail. We did it in like October one year, and I was 8. My brother was 6. And I just remember being in, we didn't take the actual Seawall Trail route, what they have mapped out now. We went kind of like inland in the bog. And I just remember being cold and wet and being up to my waist in mud and slipping and falling back in the mud. And then getting to camp, and I had my hand in, we made these Graves apple juice canisters with take cardboard in like a tuna can and sawdust and wax. Yeah. And you make this little burner. And so we had those going. I had my hand in the flames, and I just couldn't feel anything. It was just, and then one of the kids had hypothermia. And so Dad and the other leader jumped in the tent with him with the space blankets and warmed him up. And it was crazy.
So from the time I could walk until I was a teenager, I spent bushwhacking.
Because you grew up in Sydney, handy.
Yeah, I grew up in Glace Bay, between Glace Bay and New Waterford.
Right.
So my cousin and I would, my mom would drop me off with my cousins, and we would go into the woods in New Waterford for 6 hours, and we would come out at fucking dark. I don't know, we might come out 10K down the highway and then just walk back, and we were all right, let's walk back. So I've always been very comfortable in the woods. What about you guys? When did you get an interest in the outdoors?
Jan,
when did you start?
Yeah, I'm assuming you started early by the looks of this cabin.
Yeah, I mean, look, it shouldn't be a surprise. Anybody who has visited where we are right now, which is, again, my parents' backyard, we're set at, right next to a beautiful lake that attaches to another amazing little group of lakes as it goes up, just south of here. And we're right across the street from the ocean too. So, it's privilege on privilege, right? For sure. And, for me too, like the outdoors was absolutely like an escape as well. Like, for me, from the earliest memories that I can possibly go back to, it was, we grew up, it was a busy house here, right? There's 3 other boys and, times were good and times were bad. And I just like always saw that the outdoors was just like always sometimes indeed like a safer place to be.
Yeah. So,
in fact, this little building that we're in is affectionately referred to as Pete's Retreat, which Pete's my dad.
Cool.
He might actually crash in this party here.
That's okay.
It wouldn't surprise me at all.
That's cool.
And he built this because this is going back like, 25, 30 years, right? Because he would probably, at the time, about the age we are now, and dealing with 3 rambunctious boys and wanted a place to escape to, right? So he built this retreat, and then we got wise to it pretty quick that it was awesome. So we chased his ass out of here, and so took it over as our own. And, we've come down here, man, and the outdoors in general, like it's been the place that we've spent the best times, and it's been the place that we spent the worst times for sure.
Yeah.
And, always, always, always really grateful to have had it and to share it with a lot of people. I mean, Chris and I just over the last 10 years have thoroughly overly enjoyed this place at times. And, for us, man, like for me, the outdoors is the place that like I'm truly most connected to, I think, who I want to be at times.
Yeah.
But, I think the thing that makes me the most passionate about it is like discussions like this that happen in the outdoors.
Yeah.
Because there's something about it, right? Like there's something that just like brings people's walls down. There's room suddenly for growth where like there just wasn't even an hour ago.
Yeah.
And, a lot of my experience professionally in the outdoors has kind of been sharing exactly that, right? So, prior to us starting A for Adventure, I worked in a more clinical setting, like in mental health and addictions, right? Taking people out. And because addiction's a real thing, like in my world as well, family and friends and stuff. And, I, now with little kids specifically, like taking them out and kind of reliving it through their lives, it has like, there have been moments where like I kind of like feel like I'm back in those like early stages of just kind of like getting that awe moment.
Yeah.
And almost like, and actually very much coming to tears at times, thinking that like, oh man, like how lucky are we that we've got this?
Right.
Yeah.
And how lucky are we to live on the East Coast and just be able to have this playground, right? Because man, it's not, you don't need to look far.
Yeah.
Certainly, look around in Sydney, look around wherever, right? It's hard to bear sometimes that people can't just come to the realization that it's waiting there for you.
I think that's what like, on our last podcast, we talked to Grant from KIF Lab, and that's what he was saying. He's like, man, like I don't think some people really don't appreciate where we live, where we can go outside and like do all this shit, and we're safe.
Yeah,
like
for a whole host of reasons. You know what I mean?
Like
you might get that odd male moose in
we're
the
not going to get eaten by a hippo or attacked by a jaguar. Like. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I was a child who just ran around all the time. I was never inside, but like mostly playing sports, like throwing the baseball around, playing hockey, golf, like just run around the neighborhood. Like my parents would have to yell every night to get me to come in or flick the lights off and on. And
yeah,
I had a little patch of green space in our backyard that went down. There's a little waterfall. Right, I grew up in Dartmouth.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just kind of always, but hiking, camping, we never camped as a family growing up.
Really?
All. Yeah, not at all. I did a few times and with friends and stuff as I got into high school, but not so much as a child as family. So for me, I kind of came into it a little bit later. I was probably, I would even say post-university. I'd say like early 20s, like mid, 23, 24, 25. So that's like 12 years ago. So it's still pretty almost like new to me. That's why I always call myself like a generalist to the outdoors, because I love doing everything. Like put me in a canoe, put me in a kayak, stand up paddleboard. I'll even surf every now and then. Whatever the pursuit climbing mountains. I'll try anything. I
Yeah.
bike every day pretty much still, even throughout the winter. But I'm not really great at any of them.
That's how
Can I
that's
just
how
say,
I
though,
feel.
can
That's
I-
how I feel.
I'm just like
Can I say quickly that I think it's one of your greatest strengths?
that I'm a generalist.
100%, man.
Yeah.
And I really believe that. And I think that's part of why people really identify with what you say is because, I'm so addicted to ocean sports. Chris and I are away on hikes and stuff, and I'm like checking the surf report, even though we're like in a beautiful valley somewhere. So I always really respect it about you, in that like you are able to just like find absolute joy in all the things that we do.
I mean, like you said, I consider myself very lucky that, and I find myself when we're on like a tourism shoot or we're working, so we have the cameras in our hands, or we got drones and we got our phones, and I'm just like, because I struggle with social media stuff
I think everybody does.
Yeah, but I try to ground myself and realize like I'm still here, I'm still climbing this mountain, I'm still in this beautiful place, I'm getting paid. And yes, I need to do the social media stuff, but I need to just do it and then put it down because you have to do it as part of work. But appreciate where you are and realize how lucky we are to be here doing this and getting paid to do it. And being able to share these things are really cool. So for me, the outdoors is newer. Maybe it's, I'm more keen, I guess, with all this stuff. I love trying. I'll try anything. I'll do anything. I like to say yes. And I think we're talking about like trial by fire. I mean, that's how I learned how to do all these things. Like,
Well, that's when I said to you guys, like, when we did Keji, they're like, yeah, you want to go do Keji? You're like, yeah. Like, you have any experience with a canoe? I'm like, no, never been in a canoe. But, I've never been one to say no. So, yeah, this is like,
and going
sounds
with the
like
right,
a good time. So
going with the right
it.
people, going back to the education the thing we were talking about earlier, like, listen, if you've never done it, but you're going with these guys, like,
yeah, right,
with people who know what they're doing, sure, yeah, absolutely, let's go.
And Denis and Ashley Moffat and Alec, it's like,
Can we just gush on Ashley Moffat for a second?
Oh,
she's so awesome.
What a beauty, right?
Have you listened to her children's album?
I haven't.
Oh my god,
is it good?
It's so good.
What is it?
She's got she's got a new song out, and it's really
No
good.
shit.
She has a whole children's album though.
That is,
I did not know that.
Yeah,
Oh my
Actually, if I'm
goodness.
listening. What? Why didn't you send this to me?
There's a rap song
What?
on the album.
Oh yeah,
there's a rap
Look,
song.
and she, for once and for all,
About a
clarifies
about a platypus, by the way. The
That's
rap
true,
song.
and it's
That's
amazing.
so good.
But she once and for all ends the debate of what's the difference between a vole and a mole. She has a song about it.
Go away.
I'm not even joking, and it's
I am
amazing.
so excited to go home and look this up.
It's so good, boys. It's so
Anyway,
good.
just wanted to share my love for her.
Yeah, I think Ashley's a beauty. We all really connected and had a really good time together on that trip, and I can't wait to see her again for sure. Yeah. What's next for you guys? Like
you got a show. They got a show.
Oh yeah, you guys got a new
right?
CBC
And you got-
show.
No, but then
Yeah,
they've
we
got
have
the
a
the
TV
Bell,
show.
Yeah.
the Bell show too. Yeah.
So that's one thing. We just went off the deep end. So to give you guys, to give you guys, I mean, I enjoyed this. This is kind of like the style of podcast I like doing, rather than just like, hey, who are you? Answer. Like, answer. And like, because sometimes you guys are more comfortable on the mic than a lot of people, right? So it's very hard. We have to kind of steer people in the direction sometimes. I mean, not Bryson or not Kevin or
No, you just hold on for dear life.
you say like helicopter, and Bryson just goes off. Like, but it's like, this is what I like about this, and we were talking before. So for people listening, they've know because it was in the intro. This is going to be the finale episode of this so and so season.
Oh, wow.
Like quote, I should have mentioned that in the start of the podcast, but I didn't want to put too much stress on everybody to make it a good one. But yeah, no, it's going to be. I think it's good. So we're not constrained for time. We're just here talking. But like, there was some of the talking points that we had were, to talk about the experience with the show and share that for people listening. And
pandemic story. So that was we got a call from a producer who we've worked with in the past, and he was like, boys, Bell's looking for content. No one's allowed to go get content because this was like the start of COVID. I know you guys got a ton of footage. think we can put together a 6-episode show? We're like, yeah, absolutely. So we were going, like the first season of Belle 2 years ago, like some of that footage was like 5 years old, 6 years old. Like it was, the going up the Eastern Shore to oyster at the Sober Island and stuff like that was like some of the earliest stuff we've done. And we just repurposed it, shot interviews, some of it here in the shed, to kind of splice in between and make. Yeah. And we filmed one new episode that was the surfing one at Lawrencetown. And then anyways, Belle was like, this is great. Can you guys do again? So we did season 2 and we got to go up to Cape Breton for a couple of those, which was awesome.
Cool.
And that you were talking about the film crew, like only climbing mountains like while they're filming something. Yeah. So we took the film crew up, and there was a small crew. It was only like 8 or 9 people.
That is a huge crew for me.
It is a pretty. I mean, because you have the sound guy and the DP and all the assistant and all that stuff, and so a couple of camera guys and the director, but a lot of them hadn't done that, and we did Franey, and there's quite a bit of snow. Like, and Franey.
Did they have snowshoes or not?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Good,
oh,
good,
yeah,
good.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. We made sure we did our best. We actually brought a big duffel bag full of we had like 10 mid layers and, we had like proper pants, and we knew people were not going to show up with the right stuff.
Yeah.
The weather turned out to be okay, but it was, it's Franey. So it's not a super hard hike, but to someone who doesn't hike, it's the craziest hike ever. Yeah. So that was a pretty hilarious day, and like there was a lot of like counseling going down because I made I made everyone go down the long way. They're like, no, because they're like it's shorter going back down. I'm like, we're going the long way down. This is not
the road.
We're going the road. This is not a discussion. This is what's happening. And it was a lot harder in a sense because no one had gone down there, so the snow was really deep. Like there was like some 6-foot drifts and stuff, or like even bigger. So anyway, but it was getting dark, and like I was picturing people sliding down the hill from where we just came. It was like we're gonna be safe. So there was a lot of counseling, a lot of pep talks on the way down, but it was pretty. But again, that kind of type 2 fun. And then we go when we were eating dinner, and everyone's like talking about it, and they're all excited about the day because they hadn't done something like that before. So it was a really fun experience. We joke that episode would have been much better if we turned the cameras around.
Yeah,
and,
right.
Film the whole day as we were going up the hill. I'd go up the mountain as a crew because there was a lot of funny moments that were.
Did you ever see the meme with the fastest runner in the world? And then it's like a little video or a GIF, right? It's like the fastest runner in the world, and then the camera cuts over to the cameraman running next to him with the camera.
Amazing.
And so I often think of that, like sometimes when I watch that sort of stuff,
You know what? Like part of me really gets nowadays. Like I like to suss out documentary films about adventures that happened in like the 80s. Or like the early 90s where they're carrying like cameras that weigh as much as this house.
Or like
up the side of a mountain, you know what I mean? Like nowadays, like you got a GoPro, whatever, it's just like just part of the scenery more or less.
Yeah.
But man, like, the effort that went back into some of these things that these guys were doing is like, especially climbing like K2 or something, like, hauling that shit up there, like, and like living on a portaledge for 10 days. Like,
and they had their gear.
Yeah.
They had their gear for the trek.
That's it, yeah.
And a camera that weighed
cigarettes.
55 pounds or 60 pounds. Yeah. Smoking a cigarette. You're right. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, so the Bell stuff's been great. Bell's been really fun. You have to have a Bell account to watch it. But it's on demand on their like 5.1 channel across Canada. And we've got some really good feedback from it. And
we took actually a real huge bump in people checking it out. It did pretty well out of the gate,
so funny.
But it was released kind of just before, like the first season was just released just before Christmas, like, I don't know, was that 2 years ago, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And it was just kind of sitting there, and they were just getting into promoting it, right? So they're like putting it out on all their affiliate channels.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden, the January 6th insurrection in Washington happens. And anybody who was like in Ontario or BC or like all kinds of different places across the continent, if you were watching CNN and Bell was your provider, they were showing the commercial of our show, like in between. We were like, people are attacking the I know, this whole thing.
Follow Chris and Jan.
Like it would flip over. They'd be like, and like, so like all these people who were like, friends of ours who would live in other places were like, what?
Yeah, I was in economy at the Four Seasons retreat with my family, And we had heard about this like Trump, like what's going on with insurrection thing or whatever. So I turned on our little TV. It's like this little one like that we have in this room.
Yeah.
And I'm watching it, and then like, this is crazy. Like what, the world's falling apart. And then it goes to commercial, and the first commercial on was our faces. Like, Chris and Jan's Ocean Playground, like season 1, like watch it. And I was like, what the hell's going? Why am I seeing? And then my phone just starts going ding, like you idiots, like like, I see you, like all the chirps from all my buddies and stuff. But it was like, yeah, it was crazy, So season 2, I was like, listen, if anything, like we were talking to like Destination Cape Breton and tourism, trying to get everybody on board. I'm like, if anything, like the trailer, we'll make sure like some key shots of like Cape Breton and like Nova Scotia are in the trailer, because the trailer gets so much love, because they do put it on. If you're a Bell subscriber, they run a commercial for you for like a month or something. And for us, it kickstarted during the January 6th when everybody was watching TV. So
if you're listening,
awesome.
Thank you, Trump. We are
no, don't
grateful.
say that. Come on.
We wanted to get controversial.
Yeah, that's right.
Ooh, controversial.
And the radio show.
Yeah, so CBC, like I said, started right here in this very spot that we're sitting. And so that started off as like, basically they got a really big kick out of us. Like I think the second time we were on actually was the 44th CBC Information Morning birthday party at the Seaport Market. And we paddled across from Dartmouth at like 5:30 in the morning and arrived at the market on our kayak. And that's all we knew. And then we walk in, and there was like 500 people, and it was like a live audience. And we're like, what is going on? We had our life jackets on. We're like, what is happening? It was like 6:15 in the morning.
It looks so unusual that they must have thought it was a setup. But Chris and I were like,
we didn't. We thought they were just moving the studio into Seaport for the day. Like, we didn't know that everyone was there. It was like 6:15, and there's like literally 500 people. It was crazy. And so we do this live CBC hit there, and then the producer came after us and was like, Christina Harnett, and she was like, you guys are great. Will you come every Wednesday? And we're like, yeah, oh yeah, sure, absolutely.
of course we will.
Do we have to paddle here though?
But yeah, so we've been doing it. Yeah, I started counting the other day. I think we're like well over a couple hundred episodes deep at this point.
Cool.
Yeah, well over actually, probably like 250 or something. My math isn't very good. So it was every Wednesday. Now it's every second Wednesday.
Yeah.
But we increased the frequency. So we have to do on Wednesday, every second Wednesday, we do 5 interviews in a row. Boom, 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 boom. Like here in Halifax, Sydney, Moncton, St. John, and Fredericton.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's super fun. It really is. And it keeps us fresh too, because we got to come up with content every 2 weeks. We got to, what are we talking about this week? Like we just talked about camping the other, last week on CBC. And so like, what are we going to, we started having discussions now, like what's on the horizon? Like we're getting into paddling season. Maybe we do a paddling episodes, and we, the community helps too. If we ever like put it out, like, hey, what should we talk about? We're running out of ideas. Like people will be like, talk about this, talk about this, talk about this. We're like, sweet. Now we have like 12 more things to talk about over the course of the next like 6 months. So there's always stuff to talk about. But yeah, CBC for us has been a really cool, marketing tool for us too. Like,
I think like mediums like this, you learn a lot. Like obviously I could pick your brain anytime. We could talk on social media or whatever. I could Google things, but like, I learned a bunch about you guys today I didn't know. It probably wouldn't have come up in conversation, and
it's, I just talked about this because with Dave Green with the Night of Adventure. Like, cause he did that selfishly. Like 9 years ago, he's like, he moved here, went to Acadia, and he's like, I want to meet other cool people doing fun things. I'm going to start a night where people talk about things like cool adventures. And then so as a way to meet other people. And we were joking because Dave's big trip he did last summer where he canoed 1,360 kilometers around like Fort McMurray, crazy. And when you ask Dave, you're like, Dave, how'd it go? He's like, that was good. It was fun. Was it hard? Yeah, sometimes. You don't get much out of him, and he needs to do a talk. So he does a Night of Adventure, and that's when he like
opens up,
goes into crazy detail, and you're like, so okay. So instead of bugging your friends and like going on and on about this trip he did, he just does one big talk, and if you're there to hear it, great.
Yeah,
and that's how you get your.
And you're involved with Night of Adventure as well, right?
Well, yeah, so when he moved to Halifax, after he was done at Acadia and he moved here to teach, we were like, Dave, we got to make this bigger. Like, because he was doing it at Al Whittle, above the Al Whittle Theater, for those who know that, in the Just Us, like the movie theater downtown Wolfville.
I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. If you've been to Wolfville, went to Acadia, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But upstairs, you might not know, is this little room that fits like 30 people. And if you got 35 people are in the hall, like it's not a lot of room. And he would fill it every time. And when he moved to Halifax, it's like, let's make this bigger, man. Like,
cool.
This is like, there's a lot more people who would come to this. So that's all we did. It's Dave's baby, and we just try to help him with it. And we were like, Dave, we can raise money. Let's raise money. And he's always wanted to start a grant. So we started doing a grant. I mean, we were talking about this last night. We've raised over $5,500 in the last 3 years. And there's quite a bit of money in the bank this year too, to give away to people. So if you're listening and you have ideas for cool adventures, look up nightofadventure.com and send us a grant application. That's how Chalmers got.
Yeah.
When he did his thing last year,
right?
His application was like, I want to bike the Cabot Trail, roughly 300 kilometers, and I'm going to run every national park trail. There's 26 of them, which would be about 150 kilometers or something.
I'm going to do it in 60 hours.
In 60 hours.
And he crushed it.
That was
Totally.
What I just
just ate it alive.
But what I just said, that was his application.
Yeah.
Like, that's almost word for word what he wrote. And then he was like, Chalmers, send. Like, so that's how easy the grant is to get. We want cool ideas like that. So yeah, Dave Green, like, to me, has been such an awesome person in the outdoor industry here. We're so lucky to have him.
He's
here
such a beauty,
in
too.
Nova Scotia.
No question.
First time I met him was at, I probably told this in the podcast that I did, but anyways, we did these creative weekend events years ago when we first started our business, and a friend of mine, Wes Booth, was like, friend of mine, Dave's going to come down. You guys should really meet. I'm like, okay. And he came down. It was in October, end of mid-October, and he was wearing a fur vest. That was it.
Just a vest. Yeah.
Fur vest. Case of beer. And that was it. And then he had his tooth missing.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
And so,
Who is this
and that's
guy?
how that's, he's like, hey, this is Dave, this is Lee. Hey, you guys should meet. Yeah. Okay. And he goes, you know what polling is? I was like, what? Polling? He goes, yeah, on a canoe. I'm like, what the fuck is polling on a canoe? He goes, look it up. I'm like, okay. Do you want, and then he's like, do you know where King Ross is? I'm like, King Ross. And he pulls a map out and he puts it on the picnic table and he points to it. I go, oh, big interval. I'm like, oh, yeah. He goes, what's the river like up there? I'm like, pretty big. Yep. You want to poll this in like 6 weeks? I was like, okay, we'll go practice. You're coming with me. And that was how we met.
Oh, man.
And so I went home and I was like Googling polling, and it's, we ended up doing a Kedgie up the river, up the Mersey. But I was like, he's like, yeah. And then I was texting him, he's like, go to a pond or whatever and just practice polling standing up in a canoe.
No way.
And then it torrential downpour, and the river was up like 10 feet. It was huge. And I go, yeah, it's not advisable to come down, because he wanted to go to big interval to the bridge, pole as far up as he could go, which is where we came down last year, and then camp and then paddle the whole river.
Yeah, I love Dave's ideas when he just starts talking. Like,
I mean, Dave's a true disciple of like the old school mentality in a positive sense around the expedition.
Yes.
You know what I mean? He reads, he's so knowledgeable about like guys who lived 200 years ago who did obscure trips down rivers you've never heard of. And he just he's a wealth of knowledge. If you get him to sit down and you feed him a beer or two, he's got lots of awesome stuff that
So I always just heard his name. The boys talk about him all the time, and they'd be like, Dave Green this, Dave Green that. And I'm like, I don't know. And it was at one of the gigs, one of the concerts, one of the Bite House things at Lee's last year. And I was just like walking by, and this guy's like, Jonathan? And I looked over, and he's like, Dave Green. I'm like, the Dave Green?
You're him?
He's like, yep. I'm like, cool, man. You look majestic right now. He's just like sitting all relaxed, like cargo shorts, like, hey. But yeah, so it was funny really picking his brain that weekend, like over little things. And like, I don't know, I feel like he's a really easy guy to have a good relationship with, or like a good rapport with, really easy to get along with, And so I don't know.
Yeah, he's
That's
a
where
beauty.
I'm at.
He's
He
a beauty.
approaches things completely different.
Yeah.
He's like, you know this. You were saying, right? The obscure people. You know this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. I was like, I have no clue who any of those people are, Dave. No clue. But do you want to go paddle down this crazy river? He's like, oh, okay. And, but we've been trying, I've been trying. I don't know if he's been trying with me, but trying to line up and do something together for a while, but just never. He's got a different schedule. I'm on a different schedule.
Well, he's got summers off, so he's off doing his big adventures all the time in the summer, and that's probably your busiest time, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I would say so. A little bit.
And Dave loves the solitude. That's part of what really keeps him going about it all.
Well, you've spoken it earlier about being you're filming, doing all this stuff on all these hikes, right? So that was a conversation I had with him 2 or 3 years ago, and we were driving around Northern Cape Breton in the Creative Weekend, winter one, where we were at Cabot Shores. That one, you were there, debauchery. And he and I were driving around, and he was asking about, we were just having a conversation about filming backcountry trips. That's because it's not his thing, and how do you do it? What do you do? And I was like, honestly, Dave, I wish I didn't have to do it. I like being there, and I like doing things for me, and I like being in the moment. However, it's like a double-edged sword for the industry that I'm in, because I've got to document some of it to use to promote and market. And for you, you can fund and back all your trips financially, right? Or you can film a little bit and then leverage sponsorship from it. So it's a double-edged sword. It's whatever you want. If you want to pay for it yourself and keep doing it, great.
Yeah, and he's kind of done it both ways. He's kind of paired up with people who do it, with Noah Booth and those guys, with Northern Scavenger.
Frank Wolf last year.
Frank
Wolf's a well-known entity in that world, for sure.
Yeah.
A legend, though.
Oh,
truly. Yeah, absolutely.
I mentioned his name around my mom, and she was like, I've heard of him.
Just a little teaser for, because we're coming up, we're putting those podcasts together for Night of Adventure, I think we'll have at least 10 of them or 12 of them. And Dave's story, I won't ruin it, but his story with Frank Wolf, the trip he just did, Dave emailed him years ago and then waited to hear back. And then basically hey man, reaching out, I'd love to do a trip with you. If you can give me any, and Frank's response was, I'm not your guy. That's it. So Dave's he's crushed, right?
He's definitely my guy then.
Yeah. And so then fast forward now, and then he gets to go on this trip with him, and you have to listen to the podcast to hear the details.
So did Dave Green get Dave Greened?
Yeah. Kind of. Do you know what? What's so funny about that is I told him the same thing. I was like, Dave, I can picture you responding to that to somebody too. Somebody writes this big long email, all keen, and you just sorry, man, I can't help you. I can't even think about what you just, But it's in a lot of ways, it's finding your own way, right?
Yeah,
it's and that's what Dave's done such a good job. He's just he just goes for it, does all these cool things. And his name's now getting out there, and some serious players like Frank Wolf are taking notice. And
I think you just stick to your guns, do what you're going to do it well, and continually. It's consistency, being consistent and doing it, and then things will shake out.
Yeah,
I got a burp.
I mean, I guess too, there is a sense of ego that plays into this whole thing, right?
Always is,
definitely, for sure, because I think we've evolved with it a little bit, but at the beginning, for sure, we were really stoked about what we were doing and pumped to tell people about it ad nauseum. But to your point, right? It's just where there's more depth to it because it's so soul fulfilling. It keeps us pretty humbled these days. And again, just because we're in a pretty different phase of life right now, going and running and gunning the way that we look to you enviously isn't really in the cards right now because we got little kids, right? So
strap them to your back, fucking bring
them.
So part of me, I'm just
put a helmet on them,
fully, and we do. But I just look on and see you guys, and I'm 90% stoked and 10% being screw those guys. We used to be cool, I swear.
So before we're gonna. Tell me about some things, some trips that you guys have coming up. Do you have anything planned?
Yeah, we got some cool. So I just got off the phone, so this is fresh in my mind. Just yesterday, the Canadian Wildlife Services. We do some work with the Canadian Wildlife Services. We've done some videos for them in the last couple of years, highlighting some of their properties. Yeah. And this year, we get to go to a little island called St. Paul's.
Yeah.
And a little island called Ile Haute.
Cool.
And a little island called Country Harbor. and Big Glace Bay, which is not an island, but like that's also newly protected by them as well. So those 4 properties.
Big Glace Bay is protected.
Yeah, that whole little
really,
yeah,
cool. I was just out there.
Estuary there, like that nice beach, because there is piping plovers on that. On that
for
beach.
Sure.
And so yeah, we are filming there, and then but the big ones I'm really excited for. St. Paul's, of course, way off the tip. I know. Well, listen, there could be room, so be careful. Be careful what you say.
Because I'll give you a backstory on that. 2 years ago, I had planned a trip out there, and we had blocked out a week, and we were going out there for a week.
You get like a fishing boat to take you there?
Helicopter.
Okay.
And I blacked out a week. I had 5 other people black out a week, and like the day before we were supposed to go, got canceled.
So this is kind of cool for us because we get to go with like, full red carpet, so to speak, from the government, right? So it's like we're allowed.
Yeah, we didn't.
Yeah, no, exactly.
That's exciting.
So it's pretty cool. And same with Ilhout, which is in the middle of the Bay Fundy, which I've never been to. I've never been to either of those places. We went to Country Harbor or Country Island last year, and that's
tell them about that.
Well, our
adventure that you and I tried to go to Country Harbor.
We tried to kayak out. It's not too far. It's like 7-kilometer kayak, but you mostly go sheltered through some islands. This is up the eastern shore of Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
And then you have to come out into some open ocean, and the fog was like you could barely see the end of the kayak, that foggy.
Yeah.
And the waves were, the swell was up pretty good.
And we've got like all our gear with
and we
us,
have we have the FS7, and we have like all the camera gear in the hatch, and I'm just like the waves are crashing over. I'm just like, oh god, like we gotta be. And so we ended up pulling the chute and staying on this incredibly beautiful white sand beach and camped along the beach. And then the next day we'd wake up to no more fog, and it got foggier, I think.
It did.
But then I went back out with the Coast Guard from Port Pickerton.
Yeah.
And that island's really cool. And I can't wait to go back. I'm going back in June when all the terns are there. And there's like thousands of terns. Birds.
Yep.
Little shorebirds that are there. It's one of the biggest colonies left in North America.
Wow.
And so I'm really excited to see the